of this Sabbath time, this rhythm that God set up in the beginning, because it's all over the Old Testament. It's really adhered to in Jewish tradition. And sometimes we as Christians have said, well, that's Old Testament stuff. And when Jesus came, Jesus made everything new. And we don't have to worry about that so much. But Jesus did say to come. Jesus did say to come if you are weary, if you are heavy laden. And Jesus called himself Lord of the Sabbath. When Jesus came, Jesus did not get rid of the refuge that God made in the beginning. The peace and tranquility and serenity and repose. When I was in graduate school, that was where I first began to understand and hear about this concept of Sabbath and take it seriously in a new way, because I came to realize that school is one of those things, and perhaps many of you live lives like this too, where the work never really stops. You never clock out. There's always something you can do. And that's the way a lot of our lives are. There's always something that you could be doing. And so I decided, well, what if I take this one day where I'm just not going to do my schoolwork? And it was a scary thing because I knew other people were going to do better than me, because they were going to keep working. But in doing that, I chose to surrender my things and take up God's presence instead. I chose to say no to the to-do list and instead say, okay, God, what might you have instead for me on this day besides what I can produce and what human things I can do? How might my identity not rest on what I can accomplish, but who you say that I am? So I'm made in the image of God, and God rested, so I will rest too. Practicing a rhythm of rest, taking perhaps a day each week and marking it as God's day, and not even just in the sense of we go to church and we eat a nice lunch, but like we make this God's day and we are intentional about what we do and what we don't do, the way things that feed our souls, and we are mindful of the things that drain us, and we seek to set boundaries and create space for God and for community. It's really a pretty countercultural thing. To choose to live in a way that looks more like 24/6 rather than 24/7 is a pretty radical statement about who God is. It's a statement that God is in control and we are not. That God defines who we are, not what we accomplish. That being busy or tired or having a long list of things to do is not where our identity comes from. So I've been thinking about how we can remember the Sabbath and make it holy, keep it holy. It might mean saying no to scheduling certain things on one day a week. It might mean putting away your massive to-do list. It might mean creating time with your family, with ones you love. Creating time to be out in God's creation, to enjoy the things that God has made. It might mean saying no. It might mean saying no to some things, but it also is saying yes. Saying yes to peace that God has made. Saying yes to not being the end-all, be-all of everything. Saying yes to letting God be in control. And saying yes to being still and knowing that God is God. And I am not. And that is a very freeing thing to say yes to. No one else can say those no's or yeses for you. And if you leave all your time unguarded, the world will fill it up. It will become jam-packed. You must be intentional in setting a Sabbath rhythm. Sometimes this means going grocery shopping or getting cleaning done ahead of time, because I know that if I just have this one day, then I will use it to clean and get everything done. And I just use different tasks to fill my time. And at the end of the day, I don't really feel rested, and I never really invited God in. Maybe it means being mindful and having a time of prayer and reading scripture and being more intentional about it than you were the rest of the week. Maybe it means doing something that makes you feel more alive, a gift or talent that God has given you. Maybe it means being mindful of who you are making work on your Sabbath day. You know that waitresses and waiters, Sunday is like the worst day because Christians, after church people, the after church crowd is the worst tippers. We are the worst tippers. How shameful is that? How shameful is that? That we go out to eat and we are celebrating the Lord's Day and we are making other people work on our Sabbath day and we tip them pretty measly. If you are making other people work on your Sabbath day, give them an extra dose of God's love and joy. Let them know how much you care. Ryan and I, we've made Friday our Sabbath day. Friday is the day we don't go into the office. Sunday is a little bit of a crazy day for us. So we have made Friday our Sabbath day. And one thing that we really do, though we don't Sabbath perfectly, one rhythm that we have held to is that on Fridays we make special coffee and we make it slowly. So unlike other mornings where, it's just about like getting the caffeine in the body and we have the coffee that we use the rest of the week, on Sabbath day we get the beans, like the whole beans, and we grind them and we smell them and remember that this is a good gift of a day. And we boil the water on the stove and we make it in the French press instead of the coffee maker. Do it slowly. Because it's not about how fast we can do it or how convenient it will be, but it is a way that we mark this day is different. We are going to not be about how fast we can get things done today. We are going to slow down. It's even in those simple things that mark this day as different. What can you do to mark God's time, to keep God's rhythm, to take note of that rest that God has said? Come and be in my rhythm. Come and be in the rhythm of the way things were made because I made something really good and I want you to have it, but you have to take it. Otherwise, you'll miss it. Maybe it means, this is one I should be doing, not using screens for a day. Putting away the screen things, because it's one thing I can spend a whole day of doing nothing productive and still feel not rested by the end of the day because I was on screens and being unintentional about that time. God's rest is a different kind of rest, and it takes us being willing to notice and be intentional about it, to come and find that quiet center in the crowded life we lead. Finding room for hope to actually enter and find that space where we are freed. What can you do to mark God's time? To mark a day as holy? To set a day apart? To name it as God's time of rest? God gave us this gift of peace, of breathing deeply. And if we ever want this world to know peace, if we ever want this world to know serenity and tranquility, how will we ever communicate it if we cannot find it for ourselves? How will we ever teach the world and show the world a peaceful way of being if we can't find it ourselves? How will you take hold of the gift that God is offering? I invite us to sing together, "Let There Be Peace on Earth." And as we sing, remember that peace is what was made. Peace is the gift that was made on the seventh day. And for us to experience that peace, we must be intentional about it. And for the earth to know peace, it begins with us. I invite you to stand in body or spirit as you are able.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God our Creator, children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin
hands for whatever new beginnings this new school year has, for whatever beginnings this week has, wherever you find yourself. May we go back to the beginning of all things and sink our roots into the way God made the world and the things that God intended for us and the deep hopes that God has for us. And may we lay claim to the gift of Sabbath rest and peace that God is holding out for us with open hands. May you go in peace to love God, love each other, and serve the world. Amen.